Warrior Cats, Crookedstar's Promise by Erin Hunter, Chapter 16. Willowpaw, Greypaw! The cheers of the clan rang in the golden morning air as they welcomed their newest apprentices. Followtail called loudest of all, her blue eyes misting. Greypaw purred. At last he'd have denmates. Willowpaw stood in the center of the clearing, her amber eyes shone, and her pale tabby coat reflected the rising sun. Her mentor, Alpha, touched his white splashed muzzle to Willowpaw's head while Bright Sky patted proudly against her first apprentice, Greypaw. Hailstar stepped back, chin high. WindClan's loss is our gain. In the 2 moons since the RiverClan leader had led the patrol to rescue RiverClan's youngest members, New Leaf had furred the stark branches of the willows with soft green buds. The reeds had lifted their snow-crushed fronds and were thick with new growth. And the river was beginning to lose its biting chill. What are we going to do first? As the clan began to return to its duties, Willowpaw stared excitedly at Alpha. Alpha glanced conspiratorially at Cedarpelt. What? Crookedpaw knew when his mentor was keeping a secret. Cedarpelt's pelt was pricking. Purring, the brown warrior padded toward Alpha. Crookedpaw scampered after him. Is something going on? We're going to the Moonstone to share with StarClan, Cedarpelt told him. I wanted to take you there before, but I thought you'd prefer to share the experience with denmates. I have denmates! Crookedpaw circled his mentor excitedly. And we're going to the Moonstone! Greypaw pricked her ears. We're going too? Cedarpelt nodded. Yes. Really? Willowpaw's gaze glittered anxiously. It'll mean traveling through WindClan territory, she mewed. What if they steal us back? Crookedpaw cocked his head, surprised. Would you let them? Of course not! Willowpaw lashed her tail. Greypaw fluffed out her fur. WindClan follows the warrior code, okay? She reminded her sister. They'd never stop us from traveling to the Moonstone. She and Willowpaw exchanged a glance, and Crookedpaw wondered what memories they were sharing. They'd seem happy to return to their mother's clan, but they never criticized WindClan, who had cared for and nurtured them for a whole moon. It must have been disgusting, Beetlenose had goaded them more than once, eating a rabbit. Even Volclaw had joined in. Weren't you cold, he wondered. How could a heather den keep out the wind, especially up on the moorland? It never stops up there. But Greypaw and Willowpaw had just shrugged. They treated us well, but we're glad to be home, was all they'd ever say. Crookedpaw respected their careful silence. Ignore him, he told them. Beetlenose likes to get under other cats' pelts. He settled down beside Willowkit one evening while the clan was sharing tongues. Beetlenose had been calling her rabbit breath all afternoon and her pelt was still spiked. When I was on the farm, I hunted mice, he told her quietly. I got so used to the taste, it was hard eating fish again. He wanted her to know that he understood what it felt like to come back, to have her loyalty questioned. Even Oakhart teased me about being more like a ThunderClan cat than a RiverClan cat. She blinked at him. Really? Really. He purred and touched his muzzle to her ear. Don't worry, they'll get over it. But that was last moon. Now he was just glad they were paws, not only because he'd have denmates, but because they'd have a chance to show their loyalty to their true clan. When are we leaving? He paced around Cedarpelt. Go to Brambleberry, Cedarpelt ordered. She has traveling herbs ready for you. Greypaw screwed up her nose. You'll be thankful for them by sunhigh, Alfred told her. We have a long way to go. Crookedpaw raced for Brambleberry's den, but Willowpaw darted ahead of him and slipped through the entrance first. 3 piles of herbs were laid out on the den floor. Brambleberry was pulling stale supplies from a gap in the reeds. I'm glad New Leaf's here, she muttered. There's hardly any goodness left in this colt's foot, and we'll be needing poppy seeds before long. Crooked Paw sniffed at one of the herb piles she'd prepared. It smelled sour. Do we have to chew them, or can we just swallow them whole? Brambleberry dropped a paw full of shriveled mallow on the floor. Swallow them whole, she advised. It'll slow down their effect till you really need it. Closing his eyes, Crooked Paw gulped down the herbs. He shuddered. Even without chewing, they left a bitter taste on his tongue. Yuck! Grey Paw made a face as she swallowed her herbs. Willow Paw winced, but didn't complain. How far is it to the Moonstone? She asked Brambleberry when she'd licked her lips. You'll be there by nightfall if you keep up a good pace. Brambleberry shrugged. The journey's nothing once you get used to it. She traveled it every half moon with the other medicine cats to share tongues with StarClan. The worst bit is Mothermouth. Her pelt rippled. It's very dark, and you need to trust StarClan to guide your paws. She blinked at the three apprentices. Stay close to your mentors. Willowpaw wrapped her tail tight around her forepaws. What's the Moonstone like? Are StarClan cats friendly? Greypaw added. Even the warriors from other clans? The Moonstone is beautiful, Brambleberry sighed, and StarClan is wise. Her gaze fixed on Crooked Paw. Listen carefully to what they tell you, she warned. Let them guide your paws onto the right path. Crooked Paw swallowed. Why had she singled him out? Did she think his paws were on the wrong path? Hurry up. Rumbleberry began to herd them toward the entrance. You need to get there by moon high. Why? Grandpa mewed as Brambleberry nosed her from the den. Brambleberry turned back to her supplies. You'll see. Cedarpelt, Bright Sky, and Alfur were waiting by the entrance. Crookedpaw hurried to join them. Don't you need herbs? We had some earlier, Bright Sky explained. Alfur nodded to Willowpaw. Are you ready? Yes. Her voice suddenly sounded very small. Was she overwhelmed? Traveling all the way to the Moonstone on her first day as an apprentice? Crookedpaw felt a surge of excitement. He'd traveled part of his journey before. But now he wasn't alone. He was with his clanmates, and if he had a chance to dream at the Moonstone, he'd probably meet the whole of StarClan and not just Mapleshade. The cats kept to the edge of WindClan territory, wary of patrols. I know WindClan has honorable warriors, Cedarpelt told Greypaw, but there's no need to stir up memories by marching you right past their camp. Crookedpaw couldn't help wondering if it was WindClan's memories or Greypaw's that Cedarpelt was frightened of stirring up. He was relieved when they reached the WindClan scent line. Beyond it, the world seemed to open like a water lily. The wide valley between the moors and high stones was green with new leaf growth. The sun warmed Crookedpaw's back as they padded along the hedgerows that bordered the two-legged meadows. From time to time, he recognized a familiar scent on his tongue, and for the first time in moons, he longed to taste mouse. Crookedpaw, Cedarpelt's call startled him. He suddenly realized that he'd veered off the track they'd been following and was staring through a beech hedge into a furrowed field of mud. Keep up, Cedarpelt ordered. Crookedpaw raced after his clanmates. Was that Mitzi's cornfield? He glanced sideways through the hedge as he caught up with Willowpaw. Where was the golden corn? Then he remembered the giant corn-eating monster and bristled. Willowpaw looked at him. Are you okay? It must be weird, coming back here after so long. I'm fine. She slowed her pace, and they fell behind the others. You're thinking about Fleck, aren't you? Weren't you thinking about WindClan when you were traveling through the moorland? He countered. Her gaze flicked away. Is there anything wrong with that? Crookedpaw sighed. It's possible to care about cats outside the clan and be loyal. Is it? Crooked Kid! A loud mew made them both turn. A black cat stood a few tail lengths behind them on the track. Soot? Crookedpaw gasped. The young she-cat ran toward him. She was as big as Willowpaw now. I didn't think you'd come back. We're going to the Moonstone, Crookedpaw explained. Cedarpelt's growl rumbled behind them. What's going on? Crookedpaw whirled around, heart-lynching. Was Cedarpelt going to chase it off? It's just a cat I knew when he stammered to a halt as Cedarpelt glowered at him. Wow, Soot breathed. A real warrior. She stared at Cedarpelt. You're so big. Her green eyes were wide. Cedarpelt growled softly. Crookedpaw stood between his mentor and Soot and met Cedarpelt's gaze. She's hardly more than a kit. There was a warning in his mew. She's not doing any harm. Cedarpelt narrowed his eyes. Don't be long, he muttered, and stalked back to where Alpha, Bright Sky, and Greypaw were waiting, farther up the track. Leave them alone, Willowpaw, he called. It's bad enough having one apprentice hanging out with farm cats. Crookedpaw ignored the jibe. How are you? He perked his suit. How are Fleck and Mitzi and Piper and Magpie and Mist? Fleck's fine, Sits wound around Crookedpaw's, brushing against him and purring. So are Mitzi and Piper. Then she paused. I think Mist and Magpie are okay. Some two-legs came and took them away. Fleck says they were going to catch mice on another farm. What about you? Are you a warrior yet? Crookedpaw shook his head. No, but I'm an apprentice. I'm Crookedpaw now. Soot blinked. Is that good? It's great. Hurry up, Cedarpelt called. I've got to go. Crookedpaw felt a tug in his chest. I'll tell Fleck and Mitzi I saw you, Soot promised. They'll be pleased you're okay. Tell them I said. He reached for the right words, something that would let them know he missed them, and he was grateful, but he was also happy to be back with his clan. Soot's eyes glowed. I understand, she mewed. I'll tell them. Cedarpelt was lashing his tail. Come on! Crookedpaw began to back away from Soot. I'm really glad I saw you. Me too. The young cat waved her tail as Crookedpaw turned and sprinted to catch up with his clanmates. Everything okay? Willowpaw asked in a whisper as he fell in beside her. Crookedpaw nodded, one eye on his mentor's flicking tail. It's not up to Cedarpelt to tell me who I can be friends with. Those cats made me feel wanted when my clanmates didn't. I'm never going to forget that. High stones reared above them. The setting sun melted over its peaks. The last thunder path had been the hardest to cross. The gaps between monsters so narrow that Willowpaw was still trembling from the mad dash across the slippery stone. Crookedpaw forced his pelt to lie flat even though his heart was still racing. Bright Sky led them quickly away from the bitter stench up toward the foot of high stones. The earth was darker here, the grass coarser under paw, giving way to bare, rocky soil dotted with patches of clinging heather. Look! Willowpaw tilted her chin. Crookedpaw screwed up his eyes against the sun sliding down behind the peaks. As it disappeared, the shadow slope lightened, and he could make out a square black hole yawning darkly beneath a stone archway. Greypaw gasped. Is that Mothermouth? Yes. Alfred climbed onto a wide, smooth stone and sat down. But we have to wait till nearly moon high before we go in. I'm hungry, Willowpaw complained. Bright Sky shook her head. No fish or birds here, she meowed sympathetically. Crookedpaw pricked his ears. There may be mice. He tasted the air. There was definitely a musky scent worth investigating. Cedarpelt turned. Mice? They're easy to hunt, Crookedpaw enthused. Not as nice as fish, Bright Sky meowed, but I suppose they'll fill your belly. If you can catch one, Cedarpelt snorted. Is that a challenge? Crookedpaw hurried away across the slope, ears scanning the gravelly earth for the scribbling of tiny paws. He ducked behind a patch of heather and waited. The sky darkened, stars began to prick the sky. Crookedpaw's nose twitched. Mouse? He peered through the shadows. Something was shifting the pebbles farther along the slope. It smelled musky, but was making a lot of noise for a mouse. Suddenly a pale tabby shape sped past and leaped skidding over the shale, sending pebbles cracking across the slope. Crookedpaw darted out from behind the heather and stared round-eyed as Willowpaw turned and lifted her head. A dead rabbit hung from her jaws. She carried it back to her clanmates. Crookedpaw stiffened. What would Alfred say? Riverclan cats didn't catch rabbits. He followed Willowpaw and climbed up onto the rock where his clanmates had settled. They sat staring at the dead rabbit, their fur twitching. Willowpaw shrugged. It's fresh kill. Greypaw's nostrils flared as she breathed in its warm scent. Bright Sky mewed. I guess. Alpha wrapped his tail tighter on his paws. If we're gonna eat it, we should do it now. He looked up at the moon rising, fat and white, in the sky. It's nearly time. They shared the rabbit between them, though no one commented on the taste. Crooked secretly enjoyed the rich, meaty flavor, but he wasn't going to admit it. Gray Paw finished eating first. You must have been hungry. Bright Sky pushed her share toward her apprentice. You might as well have mine. As Gray Paw gulped it down, Cedarpelt stood and stretched. Let's go. He began to pad up the slope toward Mothermouth. Alfur fell in behind. Bright Sky got at her paws. Come on. She nudged Gray Paw, who followed her, noisily chewing her last mouthful. Doesn't anything ruin your appetite? Bright Sky purred, shaking her head. You do realize you're about to meet StarClan, don't you? Willow Paw's eyes sparkled with starlight. Crooked Paw flicked his tail down her spine. Excited? Willow Paw nodded and bounded up the steep, stony slope. Crooked Paw's heart quickened as he trotted after her. As he neared the shadowy entrance, he shivered. Cold air iced with the tang of stone rolled from the mouth of the tunnel. Cedarpelt had paused, and the others clustered around him. Ready? He gazed at his clanmates. They nodded, but no one spoke. Stay close. He slid into the night-black shadow. Crooked Paw trotted after him. The tunnel sloped down into the darkness, and the cold reached through his thick fur and into his bones. This air had never felt the sun. Crooked Paw gave up straining to see anything. He could hear Bright Sky's paw steps behind him and feel her breath on his tail. His whiskers brushed stone, and he veered away, careful not to crash into the wall. The tunnel bent, and the slope under his paws steepened. Suddenly, the dank air freshened. Crooked Paw sniffed, relieved to smell the familiar world above. He could scent earth and grass and heather. There must be a hole in the roof of the tunnel. He looked up, searching for a patch of starlight in the blackness. Where are we? We're in the Moonstone cave. Cedarpelt halted ahead of him and guided Crooked Paw forward with a flick of his tail. A distant drip echoed against the rock, and he could hear his clanmates breathing. Willow Paw's pelt brushed his, and Gray Paw's pads grazed the stone as they stood waiting. Where's the Moonstone? Willow Paw whispered. Suddenly, in a flash more blinding than the setting sun, the cave lit up. Crooked Paw closed his eyes in surprise. Willow Paw recoiled against him. Wow, Gray Paw breathed. Crooked Paw slowly opened his eyes. A huge rock loomed over him, glittering as though it were made of countless dewdrops. The Moonstone. In the cold light reflecting from the stone, he could make out the shadowy edges of a high-roofed cavern. The Moonstone rose up from the middle of the floor, 3 tellings high. Far above it, an opening in the roof revealed the small triangle of night sky. The moon was casting a beam of light through the hole down onto the Moonstone, making it sparkle like a star. Cedarpelt padded forward, his pelt bleached by the Moonstone's glow. He crouched down beside the rock and touched it with his nose. Bright Sky did the same. Come on. Alfur beckoned the 3 apprentices forward. Crooked Paw went first. Willow Paw's breath trembled behind him. It'll be okay, he whispered to her. He lay down beside Cedarpelt and touched his nose to the stone. The world shifted underneath his paws. Crooked Paw let out a cry as he found himself standing in the dark forest where he trained with Mapleshade. It wasn't the usual place they met. The muddy ground here was more slopping, and the trees were more tightly packed. But it was lit by the same eerie light that came from neither stars nor moon. Crooked Paw strained to see through the shadows. Welcome. Mapleshade stepped out of the trees. Where are the other StarClan cats? Hope fluttered in Crooked Paw's chest. He turned his head, scanning the forest. Why don't you look for them? Mapleshade invited smoothly. Crooked Paw snapped his gaze back. Do you mean I can explore now? Mapleshade nodded, but stay close to me. Crooked Paw followed the orange and white warrior, his eyes wide. Is this really StarClan's hunting grounds? He frowned. What do they hunt? There is no scent of prey, only the smell of decay. This is where the greatest cats come after they die. Mapleshade patted up the slope. And if you keep your promise, this is where you'll come one day. Crooked Paw blinked. Once I'm RiverClan's leader? Not just RiverClan's leader. Mapleshade turned to face him. The greatest leader the clans have ever known. but only if you keep your promise. A shadow moved between the trees at the corner of Crooked Paw's vision. He whipped his head around and saw a pelt moving through the half-light. Then he saw another and another. Slowly he realized the forest was filled with cats padding silently through the gloom. Crooked Paw narrowed his eyes. This wasn't exactly how he'd imagined StarClan. Then he recognized the shaggy gray pelt shambling toward Mapleshade. "Leave us alone." Mapleshade patted in front of the Tom, brushing him away with her tail. "It's Goosefeather." Crooked Paw blinked in surprise as he recognized the chewed whiskers and ragged ears of the ThunderClan medicine cat. "What's he doing here? He's still alive." Goosefeather stood his ground. "Is this the newcomer?" His growl was rasping and deep. Crooked Paw stared at Mapleshade. "Is Goosefeather dead?" "Are you?" Mapleshade replied. I guess not." Crooked Paw peered past her, but the old medicine cat had disappeared. "You must go back to your clanmates now," Mapleshade told him. "They'll be waking from their dreams." "Is that it?" Wasn't he supposed to share tongues with his ancestors? Learn all kinds of wise stuff about being a warrior and how to achieve his destiny? "I'm not ready." He fought to stay, digging his claws into the slimy earth as the forest began to fade around him. "No!" He woke up, bristling with frustration. The cave was black, the moon had passed, and the Moonstone had faded to dull stone. Crooked Paw stood up, surprised to find that his muscles felt stiff. Had he been lying here all night? Was that dawnlight seeping through the hole in the roof? Great Paw and Bright Sky were getting to their paws beside him. Cedar Paw was stretching while Alfor paced back and forth as if he couldn't wait to leave. "Willow Paw?" Crooked Paw mewed. The young apprentice was snoring, her head resting against the Moonstone. Crooked Paw nudged her gently. The long journey must have worn her out. As Willow Paw opened her eyes, Crooked Paw wondered what vision she had. Had she met her Wind Clan ancestors? He shrugged. Even if Willow Paw had met every warrior in StarClan, he guessed none of them had told her she'd be the greatest leader RiverClan had ever known.